All right. Hello, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well. Here in the OITE Building 2, we are living in Club NIH Relay. Anybody else is close to the front of NIH's campus today? The thumping from the rave that is going on in front of Building 1, it literally sounds like we are next to a dance club. It's it's really horrible. Really, really horrible. Anyways, I digress. How's everyone doing? Okay, I see some of this. Yeah. So I know that the academic job market this year has been a little bit more challenging than it's been the past couple of years. Emily and I have been working on looking at the data around job openings, and we know they're about 25% off of what they were in the past. That said, the good news is I have definitely been hearing a lot of you starting to get interviews. So we got another one earlier today of someone who has an interview coming up. So we are starting to see interviews finally start to happen. And so I am cautiously optimistic that this year's academic faculty search won't be as bad as I would have said back in August. So that is my hope, my genuine hope is that it continues. The other thing we've been hearing from many of you is that requests for applications are still dropping, so job openings are still happening, and that's fairly late in the game from previous years. So we really do hope that it is eventually, maybe instead of 25% less, it maybe goes to 20 or 18% less. I don't think we're going to be 100% this year, but I do hope that it is a little bit better than it has been. And we've already seen some changes. If you had asked me this in the beginning of October, Emily and I were looking at about a 30 to 40% decrease in the academic market, and it's up to 25% decrease. So I'm cautiously optimistic. So today we're going to talk about interviewing for academic faculty positions because it is time. Like I said, some of you are starting to get those calls. If you're not getting calls yet, don't panic. That's my biggest memo to you, especially not this year. I think everything is a little bit delayed. And right now, if you haven't heard anything, I don't think you will hear very much before the holidays. Most academic institutions are in finals week right now, so not much happens besides that at academic institutions. And they won't and additionally, they all close for at least the week between Christmas and New Year's. So if you haven't heard anything yet, I would anticipate you wouldn't hear anything at this point until January. So again, you might, and that's awesome. But if you don't, that's normal. So interviewing is one of those things that really kind of freaks people out. When we've done some polls over the years of what is the first word you think about when we say the word interviews, the biggest thing that comes into everybody's mind is the stress and the anxiety that it causes. It is this is the first time in your careers for the most of you that it's gotten really hard. So think about it. When you went to graduate school, especially your generation, when you went to graduate school, you knew it was competitive, but you knew where you were going. You knew the system. It was an application, and you knew you had a good chance of getting in. And then when you came and you did your postdoc, you knew the system. You had lots of different people that you probably put in feelers out. Your boss was calling on your behalf, and you knew you were going to get a postdoc and likely get the postdoc where you wanted to have a postdoc. This step is very much seems like a black box. You feel like you're throwing all your applications out to the wall, hoping one sticks, and then the interview comes. So this one is just such a different process than anything you likely have ever done that it feels really unsettling because it's the first time you can't really control what's next. And so that leads to a lot of stress and anxiety and panic and all the other things that kind of go along. So let's make sure that you're fully prepared for this academic interview as you work on getting to your next step. this stress that you feel is totally normal and totally appropriate. But I want to make sure that it doesn't get too high. Because then you start freezing and you start not being able to really function. So one way to help with the stress is really to prepare and to prepare well. So one way to do that is make sure that you understand what the process is. You understand some of the questions that might be coming your way. You know some resources that are available to you that can be super helpful. And if you have questions about this process, now is the time to start getting those questions out there. But stress is pretty normal at this. We definitely think that calming the stress is something that's important as you move into the interview. It helps you to put your best foot forward if you can navigate that stress as you go through. So, a couple of things that previous folks who have gone through the academic interview cycle have told me. So this isn't necessarily Lori's list. This is, I went through a bunch of alumni and said, hey, what do you wish you would have known before you went on the interview setting? The first is make sure that you know what all the elements are. Is this a virtual one? If it's virtual, do you have all the right software in place? All those other things. If it's in person, who does all the logistics and making sure you get from point A to point B? One of the things that they definitely wanted me to point out to you is be thoughtful as you start to think about interview dates. One of them in particular told me, I put them all back to back to back, thinking that, I would go to California this week and Boston this week and Georgia that week, and it was going to be all fine and I would get it all done, wham, wham, wham. And then what they realized is they had no chance in between those weeks to take a breath. And so the stress around that really increased their, by the time they went to Georgia, the last one, they were exhausted. So they're like, spread them out a little, but not too much that you feel like your entire spring, for example, is spent on interviews. It takes a lot of time and you won't be getting any science done during this if you're starting to hit the interview trail. There's lots of ways to prepare, and your boss and your branch and your IC training offices are all phenomenal, especially when it comes to practicing talks. We really recommend that you practice both your science talk and your chalk talk with people in your branch, especially faculty. That lots of different types of faculty who can help find the holes in your story so that you present the best version of your science that you can. And if the stress is really kind of getting to you, we get it. Start talking to a well-being advisor. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Make sure you're eating well, and reach out for support, because this is a stressful time and there is lots of support out there for you as you navigate this. Okay, let's talk first to help you prepare and understand the system. One thing to know is that the goals of the interview are twofold. Your job is to convince that department that you are amazing, right? And you are going to fit all of their needs and contribute to their community. And that community will include teaching, it will include research, it may include clinics, and it also may include service, right? Making sure that you can be of service to that department. If it's research focused, they want to make sure that the research is exciting, innovative, and fundable. Have you thought about the type of funding that you need? Have you thought about how your stuff fits into the department? Is this really going to move the scientific agenda forward? If it's a teaching focused job, they are really trying to figure out, do you have the teaching skills? Will you resonate with students? And can you contribute to the mission of education that organization has? And if you're clinical, they really want to see, can you develop your clinical skills to make sure that the patient care is exactly what that is for that organization? Additionally, that department wants to make sure that you're going to be a great colleague, right? That are you somebody that they want to work with day in and day out? And that's for for them as peers. Will you be a good teacher? Will you be a good mentor to graduate students or undergraduate students? Your goal at this interview is also to make sure that you understand this institution and in this department. Will this place work for you? Will they have the resources you need in order to be successful? Would you actually like to work with these people, right? It's not just enough of do they want to work with you? Do you want to work with them? Or is it a toxic department that you'd rather say no thank you to? And you're also, especially if it's an on-site interview, your goal is to learn about the area. Is this a place you want to live? Does it have the political climate that makes you feel like you can fit in? All those things are part of your goal. And I think one of the biggest principles of it is making sure that you know that it's both you and them interviewing. It's not just them saying, "Hey, we want you." It's you saying, "Hey, I want them." And that's a tough one because a lot of times with that, it feels like, "Hey, I'm just happy to have a job. I'll take anything." And sometimes that is a job you will still take, even though you can see that there's problems around you. But I'm hoping that you all have enough choice to be able to say those places that aren't going to fit for your background are not someplace that you actually want to continue to interview with. One of the big things is just the logistics around setting up interviews. It's a lot. And you'll likely be working with a administrative person within the department that will start working on all your travel and your paperwork and your schedules. It might be the head of the search committee. It might be a combination of both of them. So the first is, just make sure that you're watching your emails. I don't think that one's hard. The other thing, though, is making sure that you read instructions really carefully before calling with logistical questions. This seems really obvious, but the number of times that people don't read their itinerary or something like that, and then it just looks like you don't have an attention to detail. You should try to be as accommodating as possible around dates, but also realistic that it's your schedule and you have a lot of other things going on. Um, you can ask for potential other interview dates. So say they come and they say, "Hey, do you want to come on January 6th?" And you're like, "No, not really." It is perfectly fine for you to write back and say, "Hey, I'd like you to have a different time." And then also making sure that you understand what type of interview is this? Is it a screening interview just to see if they want to continue with you? Is it virtual? Is it in person, etc.? Also, make sure to verify that time zone. Time zones get me all the time. I don't know about you guys. Okay. The first type of interview that you will likely have is called the screening interview. And this is the one I'm seeing most happen at the moment. I've seen a couple of you start to move into the other type, but most of you are in this screening interview platforms. It usually happens through some kind of video conference like Zoom or Teams or who knows what everybody's using nowadays. So that's typically the screening interview will happen that way. It used to be all by telephone. No, now it's mostly through Zoom. Find a quiet place with good reception. If you need a quiet place, the OITE can help you find a quiet place. So just reach out to Emily and she'll make sure that she can help navigate getting you a space. Typically, these screening interviews are not that long, about 30 minutes. They're really just trying to ask a few questions to see if this is someone that they want to continue to have conversations with. You will always have a chance to ask questions in these screening interviews, but you likely will only be able to ask one or two, maybe three questions because they're really fast. Remember, they're only about 30 minutes. At the end of the talk, we're going to give you lists and lists of questions that you can ask in interviews. So let's hold on to that and you can figure out what questions you want to ask. A really good question at this point can be, can you tell me what the next steps are, right? If I make it through this, when should I expect to hear from you? Those kind of things. But you should also be asking a question about the job, whether that's about the research, about the department, the teaching load, or something like that. Like I said, we'll have more lists of questions in a couple of slides. You may or may not use technology slides, for example, in this. I think for the most part, slides are not used. If they are, it's very few, maybe one slide with the big overview of what you're proposing for your research project. Make sure that it's really technology friendly. You're not going to trip over things, and little to no animation. It just tends to be a little bit distracting, and you just don't have enough time. And one of the things I've found with animation is it makes us talk longer. Typical questions you'll get in this round are things like, so, pause, tell me about yourself. Inevitably, it will always be the first question that you get asked. When you're answering this question, so tell me about yourself, they really want to know in context to the job that you're applying for. So if I was going to be a faculty member after my postdoc, I would have said something to like, I'm currently a postdoc studying in nucleic acid protein interactions, and I work in Dr. Marlene Belford's lab at the Wadsworth Center at the New York State Department of Health. I'm really looking to build my own portfolio to increase the single turnover kinetics field within DNA protein interactions, specifically looking at blah, 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 blah. I'm really excited to come and have a conversation at this department because you have been leaders in the field to combine chemistry, biochemistry, and genetics, and that's exactly the type of work that I'd like to do. So it's a little bit about your background, a little bit about what you plan to do next, and a little bit about why you've chosen this type of this institution. They will ask you, why did you apply for this position? It's that one they're looking for. Do you actually know what we do and why? So, if it was primarily undergraduate institution, you would say something like, I applied for this because I've always been really passionate about teaching and I really want to be able to navigate a teaching responsibility while also encouraging the next generation of scientists to work in my research group and get really excited about science. It was, when I was an undergraduate, I was really excited about science because of the work I got to do with my professors, and I'd like to give that back to the community. Like that kind of stuff is what they're looking for in that particular question. Where's your research heading? What resources do you need? What's the status of your grant that you've listed? What's the status of those publications that you put under review or in preparation? If it's a teaching position, what can you teach? What would you like to teach? What are your classroom styles, etc.? Tell us about your mentoring style, or perhaps a time that you've struggled. If any of you are currently in this screening process and you know about other questions that aren't on the list here, why don't you pop those into the chat? Emily, the chat's working, right? Okay, good. Pop it into the chat and let's continue to build that list of questions that all of us can work off of. The next component of an academic interview will be on campus, the campus interview process. These will likely be in person. They will likely fly you out to that organization. They may give you a campus tour. I don't know why I said virtual. That must have been left over. But they'll give you a campus tour so that you can see what the campus looks like, what the department looks like, a building tour, etc. You can see like all the resources and the common use equipment and all the rest of that stuff. You will likely also have an opportunity to interact with current students and potentially postdocs. Most of the time, as you guys know, most of the time postdocs don't really participate here, but the graduate students do. Inevitably, you're going to go have some really bad pizza with a bunch of graduate students. You guys were all grad students. You remember that? You remember the bad pizza? I was so tired of Dave's. It was some kind of Pizza Dave's or something like that. If I ever eat that again, no thank you. Yeah, no thank you. So you'll definitely have some chance to interact with some current students. You absolutely will interview with different faculty members. potentially connect with administrators. You will talk to the department chair. You may talk to the dean, etc. You will probably give a seminar, a chalk talk, and or a teaching talk, right? So it will depend on that organization, and we'll talk about the seminar, the chalk talk, and the teaching talk a little bit farther along in the deck. The actual day of, it's probably going to be a series of short one-on-one meetings with different faculty. So you'll probably spend like 30 to 45 minutes with each faculty member, and then you'll probably rotate around the building and talk to those faculty members. You will hopefully get a list of that before you get there. So when you can do at least a surface level dive into what each person on your agenda does for their scientific their science or teaching. You'll have a couple of group meetings. You may meet with the steering committee as a group. You might meet with all the new professors as a group. Or you'll probably definitely meet with the graduate students or undergraduates as a group. All the meals will be with colleagues. You'll have no time on your own. Lunch will probably be some really bad pizza or some subs. Dinner will probably be with potential new faculty members. It is a very busy, very long day. These typically start by 9 a.m. and you're going all through dinner until probably about 9 p.m. So especially for my introverts in the room, it's exhausting. So make sure that you take a little bit of time during this process to think about how you're going to recharge your batteries. A lot of people tell me to remind you to pack a snack in a bag just in case, bottle of water in your bag just in case, because it's a grueling long day. So make sure that you prepare yourself, know all the logistics and travel plans, learn about the people that you're going to meet. So just, again, surface level, you don't have to read their papers. It's good enough just to read their website or maybe skim a paper. But you don't have to be crazy about diving in and knowing exactly everything about everyone. Wear comfortable shoes. That's one of my big ones. I know that when I interviewed here at NIH, I wore what I thought were comfortable shoes. They were my favorite pair of heels that I wore all the time up in New York City. And I'd never realized I actually never walked on a sidewalk in those. I only walked around the office in them. And I've had to buy new shoes by the time I was back in Union Station going back to New York City because my feet hurt so bad. So wear comfy shoes. And practice and practice and practice some more. So use your colleagues, use your branch meetings, use your group meetings to really practice and have people try to poke holes in your science. You're trying to connect both personally and professionally. They really want to know, is this somebody I can work with? And so that first impression is really important. They're going to ask you if you have questions. You definitely always should have questions. And again, I'll give you lists and lists and that. And don't forget that social activities, even though you're just out for dinner, that's really considered still part of the interview, right? You have to be on the entire time that you're there. It kind of first impressions, the things that they're looking for are actually all those nonverbals. Yeah, it's do you have eye contact? Do you have a good handshake? Do you have facial expressions? Do you have gestures? Do you lean in? Do you actually feel like you're listening to everybody else? Do you give everyone in the room a chance to have a conversation? Do you have the confidence that it's going to take for you to succeed at this institution? And it's hard for me to say, hey, how do you show confidence? You guys all kind of know that, but it may be something that you may have to tone down because it's too much confidence, or booster up to be in that sweet spot so that people think that you have the ability to do this job. They will probably ask you about any updates to your CV, like, hey, the publications, or maybe you submitted a grant. What was the score on that? They may ask you about the specific aims for your first grant, which should be probably pretty close to the research statement that you put in. Any major equipment needs. So if you need to have that cryo-EM because they don't have a cryo-EM, is that something that they're going to be able to invest in? And so they'll be asking you about that in the interview. And maybe some information about your spouse or partner, and we'll come on that at the end of the talk if you have dual career couples. They will in person likely ask you these types of questions. Where's your research going to be in 5, 10, 25 years? God, 25? Who knows, right? Even 10 years ago, science doesn't look the same. What techniques or approaches will you be developing? What's going to be in your R01? And then what's next? So have you thought about funding? Have you thought about other places you could get funding? What core facilities and equipment do you need? How are you going to distinguish yourself from your mentor, especially if your science is really the same? And are you able, you and your mentor, your current postdoc advisor talked about the fact that you're going to be able to take your research and continue that here? Do you like teaching? Right? Hopefully. Do you like to teach? What do you want to teach? Do you currently supervise students? And that would be a postbac here. So if somebody said, do you currently supervise students? You do postbacs, that is equal. How do you support diverse students and how do you deal with difficult trainees or difficult situations? They're looking to think about, being a faculty member means being the boss. So are you prepared to do that? What's your approach to mentoring? So this can be where you can bring out and highlight some of the things that were likely in your teaching philosophy. You can really explain that in person. Why are you excited about this position? Don't just say it's because the only job that I got, right? You really want to show them that you've thought about this institution, you've thought about how you can fit in and why this is the best place for you. Who might you collaborate with, and what other committee work and things interest you? And I saw a whole bunch of things coming in the chat. So let's see what's coming. How would you involve undergraduates? That's a good one, Alex. Yeah. How does your research align with our core focus areas? That's a great one. Collaborators we've talked about. How will you add to the department? How do you anticipate balancing teaching X number of courses? This is probably definitely if you're going to a teaching focused university. Oh, these are great additions. Thanks everyone for those, and continue to add them. If you've heard about additional questions, we want to know. If you're going to a primarily undergraduate or teaching focused mostly, right? How do you anticipate balancing your research and teaching 17 courses per semester? Good. It's not going to be 17. But these are unique to PUIs, primarily undergraduate institutions. So how are you going to excite students about your research? How are you going to work with only the type of students that we have here? This is particularly important. So say you go to a place like the College of Holy Cross. Holy Cross is a liberal arts. It's got a lot of liberal arts educations, and not everyone is going to be a science major, but you may have someone who is very interested in science. So how are you going to interest them into your science? How do you deal with disruptive students in the classroom? What are your thoughts on technology in the classroom? This is where you can pull out again your teaching philosophy and move beyond just a Kahoot survey and really kind of get to what kind of technology really works in a classroom. What have you done to improve your mentoring and teaching skills? So did you take the Scientist Teaching Science class that we have that's now called Teaching in Higher Education or something like that?
Teaching Science in Higher Education.
Teaching Science in Higher Education. It's coming back in the spring. So if you haven't taken that yet, it might be a good thing to take. And what do you know about current pedagogy and what's happening? One of the things that teaching in currently teaching science in higher education, one of the things we did when we revamped it over the past year is to really kind of think about what's happening in education today, not what was happening 5 years ago, because post-COVID, it's very different than it was pre-COVID. Can you teach, insert your favorite subject or your least favorite subject here? So can you teach genetics? If they would ask me, can I teach genetics? I would have said, I can, but you don't want me to. What do you want to teach? If you could develop a new course, what is it? That last one of the things I see often with that last one, if you could develop a new course, what would it be? Is that you put in this super specialized course that kind of goes parallel with the type of research that you want to do. That is probably too specific. It's probably not a full semester long course. It's probably more of a survey course or not really a semester long one. You can definitely think about new and intriguing things that are happening, right? Maybe they don't have a course of immunotherapy or something like that, or using immunology to solve cancer challenges. Think a little bit more broadly from the most part than something that is so specifically parallel with your science. I'm not sure how many clinical folks we have here today, but there's definitely some things you need to think about as well. How are you going to integrate research with your clinical responsibilities? That's one thing they're going to ask you. One of the big questions you should ask back is, what is a typical split between clinical and research for most new faculty in this department? How do you get to protect your time as a clinician? What will be in your first grant? What kind of patient samples do you need, or populations do you need? Protected research time do you need versus do you want? And what experience do you have with like residents or interns, etc.? They will be asking you both about your mentoring and teaching within a classroom environment, within a research environment, and within a clinical environment, because you're going to have to answer a little bit differently for all three of those. All right, I see some questions coming in. I'm going to take a quick pause and see what we got going on here. Okay, if you've already reached out to potential collaborators before going into the interview, or should you just think about who you're interested in collaborating with? The second, at least you do not need to like contact people and say, hey, I read your science, I'm coming for an interview, do you want to collaborate? I wouldn't do that. I think that would be way too much work and you're not going to have enough time to do all of that. You can just put things in. That's normally what I see. If you go to the same conferences and you know these people, sure. Blind emails, probably not. Would it be useful to already have developed a new course idea in your back pocket? No, I think I think not many places are really thinking about adding new courses. I think a better question that they may ask you there could be, I'm sure you've looked at the courses that our department offers. Do you see any gaps that we might want to address? And then if you say, no, I actually don't think there's any gaps because you've got this course, this course, this course, and this course. And I'm really interested that you added that course, right? That you've looked to see what their course portfolio is. I think it can really help. When answering what courses can you teach, what's the implicit threshold? Courses you could teach starting tomorrow, 3 weeks. I love that, right? I would say for that one, you're definitely going to have time before you have to go and teach that course. So something you could teach. So say if they offer you the position in April, could you start teaching that course in September? And you could say, right, hey, I definitely could come in and start day one teaching a course in basic chemistry. That said, I could probably also do analytical chemistry, physical chemistry, but probably not orgo or something like that, right? Like where you could say a little bit more, but those will require me maybe in year 2. Okay, these are good questions. Wish list. They may or may not come up in the interview. This is something that over the past couple of years, we've started to say, hey, we should really start collecting some of your wish lists so I have more of those to share. And every year it passes us by and we don't do it. So this is where you really need to start asking friends who went on the market maybe last year or the year before to share their wish lists, because you really kind of want that. It's about a couple of categories here. Major equipment, capital outlay, that cryo-EM that you want. General setup costs, that's things like how many pipettes do you need, or how many computers do you need, or do you need specific licenses or access to some kind of data set that you have to pay for, or Qualtrics, which costs a fortune, like all those types of things. The next one is recurring costs, like thinking about like personnel. How many people do you need? Like what's a graduate student going to cost you? What's a technician going to cost you, etc. Travel, if you need to put in some money for patient recruitment, animal use and care, that's a big one that people forget about how much it's going to cost. And if part of your salary is going to be from your startup funds. That's why, for the most part, these don't typically come up in your first interview, at least not the physical list. This usually you don't have to do this until you get to the negotiation stage. But it's good to start thinking about, particularly if you need a capital outlay, and also if you're starting to think about how much of your own salary you may or may not need to cover in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. Because when you do get to the negotiation step, you'll then have all that information. You'll eventually may have to start putting things in your wish list like cost of core facilities, IT support, animal housing, etc. You can ask when they come with your wish list, ask you for your wish list and how much it's going to cost. It is perfectly normal for you to say, I'm really excited about that. I want to make sure that it's as accurate as it could be. I'm going to need animal facilities, for example. Can you give me some cost per animal so that I can make sure to do the calculations as accurately as possible? It's supposed to be comprehensive and realistic. So not necessarily like aspirational, because that'll make it look like you're out of touch with reality of what you actually need, but it should have everything you do need in order to jumpstart your research program. There could also be some differences between the things you absolutely have to have in order to get going and things that you could have that would make things easier, but if you didn't have them, you could live without them. All right, and again, ask your friends for examples here. We don't have any in the OITE at the moment. Okay, I promised you lists and lists of things that you should ask while you're in the interview. There's a lot of different types of people that you're going to ask questions to. One is the chair of the department. One is the dean, likely. One is the search committee. The other is other faculty. And the last one is students. The list here doesn't really have a lot of stuff specifically for students, except kind of the first question. Asking them what the culture is, the strengths and weaknesses of the department or the institution or the center that they're in. Those are the kind of questions that you really want to ask the students. One of the things when I was a student that really drove me nuts when a faculty candidate came through is when we spent the majority of the time going around the table, introducing ourselves, and then introducing the science that we did as a graduate student. I think that that's lovely for the grad students, but you get zero information out of that except a chance to eat your crappy pizza. So instead, what I really would recommend when you have the students is you can have them go around the room and introduce themselves really quickly. Hi, I'm Lori, I'm in Cindy's lab, and we work on DNA protein interactions. And then move on, hi, I'm Emily, I'm in so-and-so's lab, and we work on cancer cell biology, right? Like really kind of moving it on really fast and getting them to the questions that you really want to know. I would ask them, what's it like to be a student here? If you could wave a magic wand, what would you change about this department, or what would you change about this institution? What is it like to recruit here? Did you feel like when they recruited you that they brought you in and you got kind of knowledge? Do you do what are those comps? Comprehensive exams, or do you do some kind of like grant proposal? What is it like to matriculate to the PhD program or something like that? But you should really ask everybody that you talk to about the cultures and the strengths and the weaknesses about the department or the institution. What kind of shared resource facilities do they have? What kind of core facilities do they have? I would ask faculty members to tell you about what are the quality of the students and or postdocs that come to that institution. Are there any training grants or other type of education things you can get on? Like, for example, when at my PhD institution, they had a training grant that was half biochemistry, half chemistry. If that's something of interest to you, ask them, how do I get involved with that? Because it's another way to recruit students where it's not going to be as much money for you. You definitely want to ask, how do they mentor junior faculty? How do they help you get your first grant? How do they help you get through promotion and tenure? What is the success rate of new faculty? Where do you see new faculty kind of fall down as they kind of go through this process, specifically at this institution? What are the grant expectations? The scholarship, meaning how many papers, etc. What is that? You should ask them about their personal view. You know, that question, magic wand. If you had a magic wand, what would you change about this department? I would ask everybody that question. If you were you, would you come here again? That's another good one. And anything else that's important to you, either personally or professionally. I've popped a link here down at the bottom of the slide deck, and of course you'll get the slides afterwards. Emily will send them along. That link is fantastic. It's out of MIT, and they've taken what should you ask the chair, the dean, the search committee, the faculty, and the students, and broken up questions in each different area. And I think that it's great, right? It's a great way for you to kind of look at what to ask each specific group. You will likely, in an in-person interview, also be asked to give a talk, and it could be one of 3 different types of talk. The science seminar. That science seminar is a little bit different than just given group meeting, right? It is really trying to prove to them that you do amazing science, exciting science, and you can talk about it and build a story. They're really looking for a story there. You might do a chalk talk. This shows what you're going to do when you first arrive and kind of how do you actually plan to get yourself started. They want to see here that stuff is fundable and that you can defend your eyes very effectively. Think about this is kind of the committee meeting. Right? Remember going back to your PhD and you had that yearly committee meeting? It kind of feels like that, where you're trying to defend your ideas without them being hopefully so mean as they were in our committee meetings. And if you have a teaching talk, this will primarily happen only at a teaching focus institution that obviously they're trying to see that you can teach and that you can connect with students and that you have a classroom style that fits what they want for their department. The job seminar or the science seminar really is important to know what the audience is. If your audience is really mixed, so a good example of that is my PhD department was literally half genetics and half hardcore biophysics. And so if you came in and you were going to give a talk, you had to be able to talk to both sides of those people because the geneticists don't really always understand the biophysics and the biophysics don't always understand the genetics. So at least for your background information, it has to be able to grab everybody in the room. You should tell the story. And one of the biggest problems I see in most science seminars that happen for job talks is that you try to cram everything in there to show them how cool you are. Instead, less is more. Really be able to tell me a story. So, arch it. Don't tell me every single experiment you did. Tell me the most important things and why those made a change in your direction of your science. I think the biggest thing that I have heard from faculty search committees is that you need to prove to them that your research is important. What's it good for? How does it relate to other things in the field? Really trying to help them understand why your science is going to change the field. Having really clean slides, being able to answer questions, and really showing them that you can be thoughtful about your science. The chalk talk really is seeing how well you can defend your aims of your grants, right? It's really much more informal. It shows that you can think on your feet and that you can anticipate where the holes are in your proposals. It might be a type of thing where they're going to interrupt you as you go through. So a lot of people will like to come in the room, put up the diagram kind of what they're going to talk about, and put their first three aims on the board, and then that way that's always there, even if you get distracted and talking about other things. They want to see, can you take criticism well? How do you back down? How do you fight for what you think is important? Remember, it's like a committee meeting. It tells you a lot about the department and how they treat each other, right? If it is a toxic environment in this chalk talk, probably going to be toxic when you arrive. You can always take a moment to collect your thoughts by saying, hey, yeah, that's a good question. Let me think about it for a second. Perfectly fine. Absolutely. Or, you know what? That's a great question and it requires a really in-depth answer. So let's talk about this later so that I can make sure I can get to X, Y, and Z. And don't argue with them. Right? So this is a quote that I got from some friends who sit on search committees that say the thing you're concerned about is absolutely something we agree with. And here's some steps that we can think about addressing it, right? So that you're not trying to argue with them that you're right. That confrontational, making it into this, that's not what you want while you're in this room. Some big things about chalk talks is really to make sure that you know what the format is. Are you going to have slides or just literally a chalkboard? What are you going to use? A whiteboard probably nowadays. It's probably not going to be a chalkboard, let's be honest. You should start practicing this early and often and with all of your postdoc friends. Because it's really something that's a skill set that you can learn. This is not something that most of us are taught to do. And especially if you've been a postdoc for 5 years or something, you've kind of forgotten what it's like to be in a committee meeting now. So maybe it's time to refresh that memory. And practice with people who are going to give you a hard time. People who are trying to poke holes, not be mean to you, but really try to poke holes into your science. If it's a teaching focused institution, you will likely be asked to giving a teaching talk, and it might be on a specific topic where they're supposed to learn about metabolism, and so you're coming in to talk about metabolism, or you might get to choose your topic, and you can choose something that's near and dear to your heart. I think the biggest things with a teaching talk is make sure that you learn about the students in advance. Decide if you're going to be a formal or informal type of instructor. If you're going to use high tech or low tech, there's benefits and pros and cons to each. Just if you're going to use technology in your talk, make sure you're super familiar with it and it works. One of the things in a teaching talk is at the front of the room that will likely be all the students, and then all the faculty and administrators will probably be in that back row. Your job is to talk to the students, not to the faculty. They're just there as observers. They're looking to see, can you resonate with our students? So give the talk to them. Make sure that you're prepared all your materials. If you have postbacks in your group, this is the group to come to practice your teaching talk, because that's the approximate age group that you'll probably be talking to. Okay, if you need 2 jobs, right, you and your other half need a position, it's normal, right? I don't know about you, but I'm married. My husband, we met in grad school and got married in grad school. So it doesn't surprise me if many of the rest of you also did the same type of thing. When it comes to asking about 2 jobs, it's best to talk to the department chair or the head of the searching committee. You might probe a couple of other people if you know, for example, somebody that you've talked with, you're going to talk to, right? They're on your agenda, and they have a spouse who's also at the university. It's perfectly fine to talk to them as well, type of thing. But for the most part, it's either the chair of the search committee or the department. It is totally appropriate to bring this up in the first interview. Be positive. I'm really excited to also talk about the fact that I do have a spouse that's going to need a position as well. You should be willing to talk about the types of positions that person would be interested in accepting it, but really try to be at least a peer. Right now, you're not saying yes or no to anything. So appear to be as flexible. And be prepared to give a good CV or a resume while you're there. Higher Education Recruitment Consortium, or HERC, is a great resource for that. I also found some great resources at the American Association of University Presidents. So I gave you both of those links too as something to read. You got the screening interview, you got the in-person interview, and sometimes there's a second interview that comes up in person. This can be either another interview, but it's more likely a recruiting trip. This is more likely they're about to offer you the position or have offered you the position, and they're offering you one more chance to see the institution before you make a decision. This is all your chance to make sure that this organization, this university, will actually fit your needs to get your science going. And additionally, that this is a place that you want to live. So you get to do all those types of things. And this is really much more. They've already basically decided that you're the one. It's now your turn to decide, are they the one? And so this is your time to get all of that out there. It's not typically a full-blown negotiation in person. That'll happen after the second interview. I'm also seeing the second interview is not happening quite as much as it used to. They kind of have the first interview. This is expensive. To fly you in twice for a first interview and a second interview is wicked expensive, and most institutions don't have that kind of money anymore. So while it might happen, if you don't have a second interview, don't be surprised. Okay. We highly recommend that you develop some kind of organizational system. This helps you manage the stress and remember where things are. This could be a spreadsheet. It could be TripIt. It could be anything that helps you figure out what kind of system keeps you organized. Find some mentors as you go through this to talk about broader issues, like, hey, what do you know about this department? Or what do you know about this institution? Or things like that. If you have an other half, keep the dialogue open at home. This is a scary time. It's about to change. Your lives are about to change. So making sure that dialogue at home stays open. You talk about your fears. You talk about what you're excited about, so that everyone feels like they have a chance to participate in this conversation. Realize this. The hardest part about this, the thing that stinks the most, is that you have no control. You don't have a control of their timeline. You don't have control where you go next. And it feels so unsettling. So how are you going to navigate that? Do you need to talk to one of our well-being advisors through that? Perfectly fine. Like, that's what they're here for. And to remind yourself, this is wicked hard. And there's lots of opportunities for you to get help, but also this too shall pass. And hopefully within a couple of months, you'll have your position, and you'll move on to the next phase of difficult. Okay, remember, here at the NIH, practice your chalk talk or job talk with your institute or branch, maybe the postdoc seminar series, special interest groups, any place that you can practice. Make sure that as you're thinking about a faculty, especially for those of you who may not be on the market this year, make sure you take our teaching course, and also try to mentor summer interns or postbacks or something like that to get that experience when you don't have to worry about it. We have some videos on Job Talks, and I know also Emily posted some things in the chat about our Chalk Talk one that we had last week. I highly recommend taking that Becoming a Resilient Scientist series. And just as important is our Workplace Dynamics series, which is trying to help you understand how conflict influences groups, how team dynamics work, etc., as well as our management short course, which is how to prepare you to be the boss. It'll happen at the end of May, and it's a phenomenal way for you to kind of jumpstart your start into your own career life. We'll also be offering some more mentor training. We moved to an online format of that, and we just finished the pilots, and so that will be coming out in the spring as well. I have 5 minutes to answer questions, and I've seen a couple come in, so let's see what we got. The best way to approach organizing interviews and communicating if changes need to happen if you're preggers or with a due date. First, congratulations. I'm so happy to hear that. I had my baby as a postdoc, and he's now 20, and the time goes by really fast. All right, so it's okay. You can probably ask them to do things virtually and or to have some opportunities to push things off. Everyone understands. And if it's a place that doesn't understand, it is not a department you want to work with. So they're not family friendly, right? So it is perfectly fine to say, you know what, I'm excited about this, but hold on. I got to tell you, like, I am going to have a baby in this time period. And so I need to make sure that we organize effectively. But congratulations. All right, tell me about a time you have struggled or other type of questions. Yeah, Alexander, I had to tell you, faculty interviews don't ask this a lot. This one I would focus about a time you struggled with a scientific question, or maybe you struggled with a mentoring challenge where you're mentoring someone and you struggled with it. Behavioral-based questions don't happen a lot in academic faculty things. They do. Every once in a while, you get that savvy person who asks it, but for the most part, you don't get a ton of this. But I would focus it around a scientific struggle that you had and or a mentoring challenge. And how did you get extra? They're looking to see what did you do in order to get past the struggle. All right, what should we be looking for clinical trial focused academic? Supposed to do the KR grant for district clinical trials vaccine unit. Shannon, I think mostly I would just focus on medical school environments that have, it doesn't necessarily have to be joining a clinical trial or a vaccine unit, but just looking at medical school environments. I'm hoping I answered that correctly. I'm not entirely sure about your question. Emily. I once read advice that during both Zoom and on-site interviews, it's unprofessional to discuss your family life. Yeah. So no, it's not unprofessional. I mean, I don't think if you mention your kids or if you mention your family, it's who we are. I got to tell you, so I've heard this advice a lot. You don't want to have the whole conversation be about your kid's soccer team, but you do probably want to make sure that it's a place that your family wants to live. And in every interview I've ever been in, I can't help but talking about my husband, who's also a scientist, or about my kids. But it's not the entire thing. It's maybe like the chit chat as you're going through, from place A to point B, or when you're off at dinner or something like that. That said, technically, they are not in the United States. They are not allowed to ask you those types of questions. So if you are uncomfortable answering any of them, it's perfectly fine to say, "Yeah, I have a family. They're great, but let's get back to the conversation at hand." Perfectly fine to redirect it. You don't even have to answer any of that. You can redirect it back towards your science or anything like that. All right. Is it appropriate to ask for feedback from the committee? You can, but I have to tell you, they probably will give you almost no feedback. And so if you know someone in the department, that might be a way for you to get some feedback, but otherwise they would probably just say, we had better qualified candidates. Most people, when they ask this, don't get what they're looking for, which is like real good. It happens sometimes. So you should ask. It's not going to hurt. And it's not going to make you look unprofessional by asking. I think that's really kind of what you're asking. Can you ask who will be on it beforehand? Sure, there's no problem in that. Um, they may not know. They may not tell you, but you can ask. You absolutely could ask. Everyone. Well, it is officially 2 o'clock, and Emily, we only had until 2 o'clock, right?
That is correct.
All right. So I'm pretty sure Emily recorded this, and so she'll send
Yes.
out the recordings. If you need anything as you kind of go through this, please feel free to reach out to us. We're really excited that all of you are here, and that all of you hopefully are on the interview realm. I wish you the best in all of it. I want nothing but the best for all of you. And if you need anything as you kind of come through this, please let us know. All right, have a great, what day is it? Thursday, and whatever holiday you potentially celebrate over the next month or so, happy holidays. And don't forget, Sharon's retirement party is tomorrow. If you want a free piece of cake, come on by Building 31 after what time? 2:30.
2:30.
So, all right, everybody, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.